Hi, my name is Haik V and I'm the Real World Yogi, and today I want to talk about picking the right yoga mat for you. Now notice I didn't say picking the perfect yoga mat because there's no such thing as perfect. And as human beings, sometimes having too much choice can be overwhelming and actually has an opposite effect of making us less happy because we don't know which one to decide on. So, in order to pick a yoga mat, it's not necessarily about finding the one that's good for everyone. It's about finding the one that's good for you. So, a couple of things that you want to consider today. I'm not necessarily going to tell you which one, although I'll share my favorite. But you need to figure out what your preferences are. So, this comes into play. What color do you want? Maybe there's a particular brand that you're into. And also purpose. Do I need one that's rugged? Do I need one that I'm going to use outdoors? Is it going to be on cement? Is it always going to be in a studio? So figure out, take a minute and think about what is your preference and what is the purpose of this mat? How long do I want it to last, right? Is it just for me to experiment with yoga? And so do I need to start with something maybe not as intense? Which brings me to my second point. You also need to consider the price. What price range are you willing to consider? And again, with some of the brand name ones, you can go upwards of over $100 that have lifetime warranties, or you can go towards the lower ones where you pick one up at your local mart for $5. So think about what price point, what your budget is, if you have constraints, and what your preferences are. Once you've figured out your preference and your price point, I'll also say about price, more expensive doesn't necessarily equal better for you, right? It might have a lifetime warranty, but you may not like that mat. You may be just fine trying out yoga for the first time because you're just experimenting with the $5 mat, and then you can move on to a more expensive one. So it doesn't necessarily mean, more expensive is the right one for you. So consider that as well. Number 3, important to think about the thickness. And the reason the thickness is important is padding, right? The whole point of a mat is to pad you a little bit from the earth, is to provide grip also, but padding is also especially important for the knees. And something that I've found is a lot of the poses that require you to put your knees down tend to make my knees, I don't want to say hurt, but make them feel wonky, and you definitely can injure your knees. And I used to have yoga teachers tell me all the time, this is a side story, but try your knee this way, try your knee that way, until I realized there are certain poses that I don't want to do and I won't do, right? Because my knee, the anatomy of it, the way the cap is, I figured out, was just not right for that pose. And then I would talk to other people who had the similar experience, and I thought, okay, nothing's wrong with me, it's just different anatomy. Some people with this type of kneecap don't do this pose because it can move the knee and it can cause injury or pain. So, that being said, I still do a lot of knee down poses. I just pad it. You're not going to get the thickest mat in the world. Sometimes you just put down, most of the time, a blanket, and that'll pad your knees. But thickness is important. Some mats are thicker than others. You definitely don't want to go with a Pilates mat. I made that mistake when I first started out. I just picked out, a mat that I knew nothing about years ago when I first started yoga, and it was too thick. And so sometimes when it's too thick, the balancing poses are harder to do. So if you're doing tree pose or something, right, and you're on one leg, your knee is wobbling, your foot is wobbling because it's too cushy. So the thicker mats are typically for things like Pilates. You're on your back, you want to be cushy, protect your spine, things like that. So you want to go too thick, you want a yoga mat for sure, but also too thin doesn't provide enough cushion. Also something about the price point, sometimes if you go to a really cheaper route, they tend to shed and that can be messy and they're not thick at all. So meet somewhere in the middle. You can find really good ones even though for like $15, a decent mat at your local mart. Number 4, the length of the mat matters. So the length of the mat is important because of how tall you are. You want to be able to lay down and have your feet all the way to your head fit onto the mat. Okay, you're not necessarily going to get in there with hands too, but, and I'll talk about the length of my mat too. It's a little bit longer. I believe it's 74 inches if I remember. I ordered that quite a while back, but it ranges between 68 to 74 inches. Don't quote me on that. Could be 72, could be a different number. So length is important. You want to know how long the mat is. And the last one, which was the most important for me, was the slip and slide factor. So when you're doing yogic poses, you want grip, right? Sometimes the bottom of your feet can sweat, your palms can get a little moist. So if you're in a pose and you're trying to hold, right, down dog, or even a warrior, you want to make sure that you can grip on the mat itself. And a lot of mats, even when they are grippy when they're dry, as soon as things get a little moist, slip and slide, and it's really hard to hold a pose. And I'll also say the purpose of the pose isn't to add that extra challenge of the slip and slide. That could also, in my opinion, maybe cause you to injure yourself because you might tweak something in trying to like prevent something from happening. So I'll talk about my mat just because how it ties into some of these things, but you can feel the mat, right, and see. So I have the Jade yoga mat. I will say they have a thicker version of this. I have the thinner one. It's not the one that's extra cushy. I'm not sponsored by Jade, but I'd love to be. Jade, if you want to sponsor me, I'm here. Because I really love the mat. And the reason I picked this mat, I went through a few before I got to it. But number one for me was the slip and slide factor. They have like what's called, I think, an open cell technology where, you know, it's the natural rubber, it's the natural latex from the trees or wherever they get that from. And the cells are kind of open, so you can feel the texture is a little bit rough, okay? Some people might not like that. I don't love it. I don't love when I have my face down on it or something. It can make an imprint. But again, there's no perfect mat. I had to sort of use this formula to come up with what is the favorite thing for me. What is the right mat for me? And yes, sometimes you have to compromise. And so the rubbery grippiness is good for the slip, but I didn't love the texture that's a little bit tough on my skin. That's okay. It served its purpose. I don't slip on here, even when my hands might get wet. Of course, some people can, they put down a towel and you can consider that option too, but I don't love that option. I'm not a big sweater, other than just the moisture sometimes in the hands or the feet that can cause the slipperiness. And that's a different story for a different day because then I don't cool off as well. But I know some people sweat a lot more, so they put the towel down. And then I also bought this strap. Maybe I should add a carrier and people have bags. You can just strap it up and sometimes just hold it. You don't have to have one that it hangs over your back. But consider these things. Like I said, I have the Jade, and comment below on the ones you pick. Comment if you have questions. I might even go back and look up if you have questions about how long the Jade exactly was and which thickness. But do your best to pick one that suits your needs. Trial and error, experiment. You're not going to be stuck with the mat forever, but if you do buy a quality one, right, you want it to be one that you like. I've had this one for years, and so it was worth the investment. I think it was around, back then when I bought it, $80-ish or so. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this helps you to, decide the mat that is right for you with a little less fret, because I know making decisions when we have so many choices and we don't even know where to begin or what to look for can be difficult. Preference, what is your preference? What color, what brand? Purpose, price point, how much are you willing to spend? Most expensive doesn't necessarily mean better for you or right for you. Thickness and padding for the knees, not too thick, not too thin. Length, you want to fit foot, feet to head on the mat. You have to be able to lay down, and slip and slide factor. Okay, see you in the next episode. Please comment, like, or subscribe so that we can grow this channel.